Welcome to Two Steps Back with Nicole and Kat. It's a podcast.
Hi, everybody! Welcome back to our very highly anticipated recap of our first book of the month. Of course, this is Betty by Tiffany McDaniel. So, on our first episode of talking about our love for books and also how we were starting a book club, this is our first pick. And sorry na talaga guys kasi hindi namin naisip that we should have given trigger warnings for this book because, wow, very beautifully written, but ang daming themes. Daming trigger warnings din. Ang daming heavy topics. So with this book review, we want to really dive in. We both really love this book. We were messaging back and forth kami ni Nicole with our insights, revelations, and squeals, and everything in between.
Yeah, pero doon ko talaga na-feel ang buti na lang talaga may book club tayo because may ka-handhold ako throughout all the trigger
Emotional
warnings.
support.
Yeah, so we weren't informed either. I mean, it's a cute cover. Who would have known?
Who would have known talaga?
Yeah, and because of that TikToker na parang, hindi ko alam na ganun siya kalalim na trigger warnings talaga. So, we posted it at the beginning of this video. So, at least we are here now to flesh all the themes out with you. What we will do for this episode is the book of the month will be a two-part episode because this literature is just so rich. Ang dami nating madidiscuss about it. This first part, though, we are going to be reading the most significant parts that stood out to us in this book so that those of you who aren't into reading but are tuned in to our podcast, at least parang feeling nyo kami yung audible nyo, kami yung audiobook nyo. Wow.
Love it. With our naging smoky na ang voice.
One day.
Practicing. I love it. With that being said, though, there will be spoilers up ahead. So if you are planning to read this, click away now and come back when you have read it. But if you don't mind knowing what happens in the book, the twists and the turns, the developments, etc., we're happy to share it with you. So for a quick synopsis and introduction to the premise of Betty. So Betty is the sixth of 8 children in this family that resides in Ohio in the 1950s. So she is a child born to a Cherokee Indian father and a white mother. So there's themes of racism here. There's, of course, the heavy theme of family and all that entails because she is navigating life as a child. I think she starts speaking as the protagonist at 8 or 6 years old, something like that. And the way that the book is written, it involves her present day thoughts and observations and experiences, as well as flashbacks to fill in the holes of the family's history. Yes. How the parents met, and to fill in, I guess, and enrich the family tapestry that is really, I would say, the bone and the structure of this story. There are also themes and instances of SA here. So if that is a trigger for you, big heads up because that is a heavy theme in this book, as well as abuse, family generational trauma, racism, as we just mentioned. So buckle up. It's a little bit of a lot.
Also animal abuse then.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was a surprising twist for us. So heads up with that then. I think the overarching theme for this, regardless, is feminism. And what each woman went through. Each woman na character dito sa book na to went through na challenge. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 major characters who are women here, which is the mom.
Yeah.
And then yung tatlong magkakapatid, the 3 daughters, Flossie, Bailey, and Freya. So let's start with that one, sis. What each of these women went through, especially since the opening line pa lang of the book.
When you read this line too, I don't think you have any context in the beginning of the book, but as you read along and the story unfolds, you start to see oh wow, it really encapsulates the whole essence of the story.
Yeah, para it's the solid metaphor pala for everything that they went through that could be very, very different but still the same. So here is the opening line of the book. A girl comes of age against the knife. She must learn to bear its blade, to be cut, to bleed, to scar over and still somehow be beautiful and with good enough knees to take the sponge to the kitchen floor every Saturday.
Nagko-goosebumps.
Yeah. Parang sabi mo nga sis, diba, parang the way you describe this book, parang it's really heavy pero with lyrical writing.
Yes.
So
The
that's-
writer has so much talent, Tiffany McDaniel. The way that she's able to express the authenticity and the depth of the human interactions in this book, but it's almost in a lyrical way. It's really, really smart and intelligent. So there were times when I would read a chapter, finish it, and just be like, tulala.
Yeah. And it doesn't feel as heavy in a weighted way because it's written so beautifully.
Actually.
Without it being too heavy-handed na ito yung emotion, pero like, it destroys you. So yeah, that's a very
the disclaimer.
yung favorite feature talaga namin sa book na to. So when I read that first line actually, I was like, baka parang nega na feminism aspect na naman to.
Ako
Akala ko
din.
ganon. Tapos ganun pala kabigat yung pinagdadaanan nila. So let's start with the eldest girl, the eldest daughter, Freya.
Freya. Or maybe we should start with the mom.
Okay, the mom.
I know it's like the heaviest part, but I feel like it's because of the mom that it got carried down to Freya.
Sige.
So the mom, she was being essayed by her father. It is revealed later on in the book, but it's just implied that, you know, in the beginning, how she met the father, si Landon Carpenter,
The father of her children.
of Betty and the children. She just meets him and then has an encounter with him, lays with him, as is in the Bible. And then becomes pregnant. So as the reader, you don't really realize that this child is from anyone else except from the father of Sila Betty. But upon the traversing of the storyline, you find out that she has been SA'd by her father, and it was actually her own mother that allowed it to happen, who was aware that it was happening. So just to imagine the trauma that this young girl faced and becoming pregnant at the age of, I think it was 16, and she was beat as a consequence by her father. And that's where Landon, the father, comes into the picture, and he actually goes and beats up the dad and then takes her away. So that's how she escapes her family dynamic, the super toxic, super abusive family dynamic. But we can see through her characterization, parang never siya nag-heal. Or she does have a healing journey, but it's one of the most nuanced and drawn out processes compared to the other characters. Would you agree?
Yeah, which is what healing looks like, really. Healing is a long process. It's also ugly. You know, you feel like kasi parang kung healing, kailangan you're cleaning out stuff. Pero it doesn't feel like a cleaning out process all the time. And it's always like these triggers na kaya the mom has these crazy episodes na in the beginning, when it wasn't revealed pa about yung history na yun na essay siya, parang you would just think that, oh, she's such a bad mom. She doesn't deserve to be a mom. And yung generation niya na yun is yung non-communicative generation also.
Parang
So,
internalized trauma.
yeah. So parang hindi niya na-process to ever because the husband didn't know about it either. And then eventually she got to reveal it to her kids inevitably.
But actually parang mainly to Betty.
Mainly to Betty. Then, yeah, so parang there are just these I like yung misconceptions natin about people or with our parents. So sometimes, diba, yun yung atake natin na ang negative niya naman.
Or
ang
judge ng
discouraging niya.
surface.
Yeah, pero in the end, parang, oh, it's because they experienced this.
Or galing sila sa experience na to, or because you can see
Yeah.
throughout the book, the mom is actually trying to give advice to her daughters, but the advice is heavy. It's like the world is a cruel place. It's a dark place. It doesn't have a place for women to be
Natalo lagi
gentle
ng
and
mga
soft.
babae. Yeah.
Yes.
Oo,
Radical
oo.
quote to kind of summarize this. So it goes, and this is Betty speaking. Mom laid her cheek on her shoulder. I thought she would speak no more, but she parted her lips today. Sometimes I think the universe is just a glow, the glow of a cigarette in the dark. All the stars, the planets, the galaxies, the infinite edges. It's all in the small glowing tip of a cigarette in the hand of a man leaning back against a wall, watching a girl walk by on her way home knowing she'll never get there. The mother, in a lot of her efforts, is trying to set up the girls with an expectation or maybe even a protectiveness up against the world, because she says the world's going to use you, abuse you, discard you. And then there's a really beautiful part in the book about how she then parallels that to the character of the father. Because I think because of her experience with her father, the mom with her father, so the grandfather, she views men through that lens as well. That
Para
men,
prey yung women.
Yes.
Predatory yung men. And basically, feeling ko narinig na rin natin to sa parents natin one way or another na parang you are kind of doomed in this world. Lalo na if you're not smart about it. Pero parang the odds of outsmarting these men and this cruel world, low chances yon. Ganun yung feeling ng mga advice niya. Pero yun nga, yung sabi mo, she means well. Pero also, lalo na as a kid, Betty was like, 8? And going through puberty na parang, shucks, yan na yung fate ko. Galing siya sa mom ko. So, ano pang paniniwalaan ko? There's just this heavy sense of hopelessness and going against the odds talaga throughout this whole book.
Super. And it breaks your heart because as you understand the character of the mother, you understand where she's coming from. Kasi kahit in the lens of love, you can see she didn't even receive love from her own parents.
And where else can you get it?
Yeah. It's so sad. So there's even a quote of how she is even asking Betty, do you love me? She says, Betty, do you love me? And I think Betty's like 8 or 9 here. You know, in some cultures, silence is taken as a yes, she said, but in most, it's taken as the opposite. Oh, I'm not surprised if you don't love me, Betty. She leaned her head against mine. I'm not surprised because my mama told me I would not find love in this world and the world would not find love in me.
I super hate her mom for that.
I know.
She destroyed her kid.
Yeah.
And there's just so many imageries in her trauma. Na grabe yung description. I mean, yung author wrote this based on the biography of her grandmother. So Betty is her mom.
Yes.
Tama ba?
Yes.
Oo. So the mom is her grandmother. Pero yung episodes niya, yung symbolisms in every episode, the graphicness of it, ang heavy talaga. I like how trauma is discussed in this book in such a way na very careful,
Yes.
very delicate. Hindi siya thrown around carelessly.
True.
Diba? Para there's a purpose to why it's put there and not to sensationalize things or make a point in a chapter.
Or use it for the plot.
Yeah. So it really disentangles, like they really tackle it na flesh out the issues. So na even if there's no outright answer na written na conclusion na okay, to disclose the psychological analysis on this character, parang ikaw mismo kasi all throughout the journey of this book, parang you question yourself on your perceptions of people, the ones around you, especially within your family then.
Super.
Ganun. So parang it allows the reader to form conclusions themselves rather than the book dictating.
Oo, kahit dumating sa character of the mother, my perception of her changed through the book. Kasi at first, I was really thinking how cruel it is to burden your daughter at the age of 8 with such vivid descriptions of your trauma. But then, parang towards the end, na-empathize ko sa kanya kasi parang it's just like, she was having na-overflow na siya. As in, parang hindi niya na kaya to carry it on her own. So it wasn't, I don't even think it was with the thought of, let me burden my daughter with this.
Yeah.
It's like, I need to either speak it out to process it or parang it's just flowing out. Like it's pouring out of me. Like I don't know how to deal with this hurt. Parang it was not an informed decision. Parang reactionary lang.
Yeah.
I don't know. Kasi I think when it comes to mental health and the way that it's discussed in books as well, like it's so easy for us as a reader to be like, oh, I wouldn't react like that. I wouldn't do those things. Pero that's the thing. Like, parang it's so easy to say that, but when it comes to actually like dealing with those issues, people react in ways that maybe you cannot justify, but that's the nuance of mental health. No?
That's the realities of it. Yeah. And lagi yung dinadump kay Betty talaga sa daughter niya na to because feeling niya siya she's the strongest among the daughters. Si pinaka may kaya, no?
Or maybe she's just the one that didn't outwardly show na she's not coping well. Kasi I feel like everyone else was quite expressive. Like, si Flossie, si Freya. Medyo like, I want to
May
get out of
outlet
here.
sila.
Yeah. Although may writing outlet naman si Betty. Pero parang, do you think that's why she was identified as the strongest one? Because she was...
Feeling ko kasi parang she's the most like her dad.
Yeah.
Feeling ko yun yung
And the
connection.
dad is the rock of the family.
Yes, one of our favorite characters in the book, which we will delve into later on. Just to conclude the segment of the mom, I like her, yung hindi siya outright revenge story or redemption story. Parang it's just the strength that she learned by going through what she went through. Yung dadaanan mo lang, pero lagpasan mo. Di ba ganon? Ito yung quote na when nung na-wrap up na yung may conclusion na yung trauma niya kasi the dad passed away. Sabi, I suppose my mother returned to the monster so she could show him what the little girl she had hurt had grown up to be. A woman who was strong enough to remember everything. Kasi parang iniisip ata nitong part na to ni Betty na bakit pa pupunta yung mom ko sa wake ng dad niya after all the atrocity na ginawa sa kanya? How can she stand to be in the home where it was inflicted on her, yung trauma na yon? So parang iba lang din to see it from the eyes of your daughter na my mom has taken back
Her power.
her power. Na it's not necessarily the kind of fighting back
Or
the
the loud,
head.
the big, the actionable.
Oo.
Pero it's like the small battles that are won.
Yeah, na parang that's the strength of my mom. And for your child to be able to recognize that, I agree with. Kasi parang I'm sure hindi sinasadya ng mom, pero like, for your child to see that.
So after the mom, Freya is the eldest sibling who is a woman. And she the way that she's characterized early on in the book is she has a really ingrained motherly instinct. And I think that's akin to a lot of older siblings, especially older female siblings. It's like the care and the maternity type of spirit comes very easily to her, that it's even pointed out by the mother. Na almost it's a jealousy point for the mom. Na parang, Eddie, wow, ikaw na. Parang yun ang mga comments ng nanay sa older sister kay Freya. But you can see Freya has a very maternal instinct when it comes to her younger siblings. And then that manifests in a way throughout the book that kind of frustrated me at times, because it's like, save yourself. Okay, for context. So the development of Freya as a character, actually na-pick up ko, I think we both picked up on it quite early in the book, where there's the eldest sibling, who's Leland. The reason that the mother and the father of the children are able to escape their maternal home of the mother is because she becomes pregnant. And it's insinuated in the book that it's the child of the father of Betty. And so they move out, they start their own family. So see Leland, he's not really characterized a lot through the eyes of Betty, because being the eldest, he's hardly at home. He goes to the army. But then when he comes back home, there are interactions with Freya that are kind of weird. Like parang they'll disappear, just the both of them, and then Betty will be looking for her older sister, like, where's Freya? Or parang she'll notice an energy shift in Freya whenever Leland's in the room.
Yeah.
So talagang naisip ko may funny business talaga dito. And then when I asked Nicole, mafe-feel ka ba? She's like, oo, may feel din ako. So tama naman kami. What was actually happening is Leland was SAing Freya against her will, and it was a long going.
Like, since they were super young, which is crazy. Kasi lumalabas siya sa lyrics ng songs ni Freya.
Yes.
So medyo mas on the nose pa yung kay Freya na mafe-figure out mo.
So imagine within this house, they're like a haunted house as well, kasi medyo low income family sila. So si Freya is just silently enduring this SA from the older brother who comes and goes. Like he gets a trucking job after the army, so he's in and out. But every time he's at home, parang may something that's happening. And see, Betty witnesses one of the instances. And to read that from the perspective, I think she's 8 or 9 years old at the time, just breaks your heart because she feels so powerless to it. And then she guilt trips herself over it. This child, Betty as a child, she's like, I should have yelled. I should have done something. I should have protected Freya. But she couldn't. In her age, in her fear, she's like, what if no one believes me? So she never speaks up about it. And I guess I got frustrated with Freya because it was like, save yourself, escape, nah. But I think in the maternal instinct that she has in her initial characterization, it manifests itself in that I need to be here to protect my younger siblings. I feel like that's one of the main reasons she stays.
To make sure it doesn't happen to them either.
Yeah, so she becomes like a martyr. And that breaks my heart.
And also, she has a strong notion as well that if it comes out, if her family finds out about the incidents, it'll break her family apart. And like, where will they go? They're already like against the whole world. They're fighting against poverty. They're trying to stay together to survive, you know? So it's like, do you even have a choice? And I feel like victims, of course, especially if it's the perpetrators within your family, like, would you even feel like you have a choice? So that's how how taboo it is discussed here as well. Like, it's just told through experience, and it's like a very it is what it is kind of narration, you know? Like, this is what happens as a reader. What do you do with it? Like, how would you feel about it? And it makes you think talaga because when do you encounter victims, for example? Like, it really puts you in an uncomfortable position to really put yourself in their shoes, for example. And in different shoes then, like, what if you're the witness? What if you're the one being abused?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What if you're the parent and you find out it's happening in your house? Like, it's one of the scenes that really encapsulates the dynamic of Freya is when Betty confronts her not confronts, but admits that she saw what happened.
Yeah, because she wants to save Freya at that point.
Yes, but then Freya gets so angry and hits Betty and it's like, you didn't see anything.
Yeah.
Nothing happened. I don't know what you're talking about. Tell me you didn't see anything. And just keeps hitting Betty until she says, no, I didn't see anything.
Which is so uncharacteristic of Freya.
Super.
She's so nurturing.
Yes. So parang it's just the manifestation. Like, and it's sad to see, like, in a way, Freya was only, 17, 18 here? Now she put the burden of the whole family on herself. Like, I'm holding everything together. But as an eldest sibling / oldest female, like, in a sibling dynamic, you're like, we do have a tendency to take the responsibility for things that we shouldn't. It's something we put on ourselves, even if it's not placed by the parents. But of course, this is a different scenario. But like an exaggerated, magnified version of how Freya feels like a martyr for the family, I thought was really kind of confronting to read.
Yeah.
Because it's themes that even though if you don't experience something like that or akin to this, parang you can resonate with, like, you know, taking the responsibility for your parents staying together, or the
Like, you actually think of scenarios as a reader that, okay, what if Betty just says it? Won't the dad understand it and like think of a solution? Yeah. So every character here is carrying a burden. Super.
Yeah. And they're all dealing with it in unique ways. So they all have different coping mechanisms. So Freya, she sings and she writes her own music. So dotted throughout the novel are these little excerpts of her lyrics that, as her story is unfolding, don't really make sense. But as soon as you figure out what her reality is, what her secrets are, or the family secrets are, her lyrics start to really have weight. And it's just so sad that parang it even alludes to the mystery or the unknowingness of the whole family, because they're listening to her singing, but they don't second guess, or they don't have a second thought of what she's singing about.
Yeah.
which kind of breaks your heart because it's almost like this is her
Confession.
confession.
Yeah.
And I was so upset what happened with Freya. Oh, there's another trigger warning here. There's miscarriage
Oh, yeah.
and abortion in this book. So if that's a trigger for you. But yeah, Freya ends up pregnant because Leland, the older sibling, is still continuing
Vile ways.
abuse towards her, even though she lives outside of the family home. And it's revealed later on that she falls pregnant. And then she's on the phone with Leland, or he calls her. And Betty is with her, or has just left her. And then she's talking about going away to the beach or something like that. Like she just wants to go and, yeah, just go away.
If she has a dream life ahead of her, and
then she's
she was unalived by her own brother.
the abuser.
Yeah. I think we can tie the strings together here also just to conclude this chapter on Freya. So Leland apparently is the seed of the mom and her dad, the mom's dad.
Yeah, who was SAing her.
Yeah.
So it's actually a result of incest and abuse, Leland. So there's also the question of, is this generational curse?
Yeah.
Is it a generational curse?
sin?
Yeah, that's been passed down from the father to the son.
Yeah.
But it also reveals a little bit about the Betty's father's character because even though Betty is the one that takes out after her father and the looks, like the Cherokee blood comes out in her features, like she's more dark skinned than her siblings. She has darker hair, darker eyes, higher cheekbones. It's said in the book. I think probably, well, it does reveal the dad knew, right, that Leland wasn't his.
Parang hindi.
It's not alluded to.
Parang hindi.
So do you think the dad knew?
It was never hinted in the book.
But what do you think? Like a personal take?
But maybe not.
Yeah, maybe not. Mana.
Or maybe he had a hint because he's so in touch also. But also with the secrets within the family, he's also like
why
out
he
of
was
touch
so
and he-
hard
I don't
on
know.
Leland, and that's why he complained about the upbringing.
I don't think so. I think the dad is too good to be hard on a sibling. It's just, I think the contrast also is, so Leland, the older brother, the evil brother, he used their poverty
Or justified his actions through.
as an excuse with his evil ways. Like, okay, I need to be rewarded as a man because he had this dialogue with Betty. Like, you don't know what it was like to like when their family was just starting out and it was just him and Freya. It just puts into contrast that, the dad also faces a more cruel world actually with racism. Like, there's no way for him to succeed. But then, did he use any excuse of that to be evil?
No.
Right?
But
So
he
it's
could
like-
have so easily.
Yeah. So it's like showing that we have a choice in this world. Either to like allow the world to make you evil as well, or to choose another path and be good.
Kaya super loved the dad's character in this
Yeah.
book.
But before we get to the dad, which we are excited to discuss,
Flossie.
we'll move on to Flossie,
So Flossie is the middle sister.
middle child.
After Freya. So Flossie's quite a character. Out of all the siblings, I would say that she's the most flamboyant. She's
Fun.
the most like personable showbiz type personality. Like
Yeah.
she's really quite the character, and it's personified in that she loves dressing up. She loves the idea of becoming a famous actress one day. She becomes obsessed with it. She puts on plays for the family. She does all of the roles, all of the different roles and characters herself. So she has stars in her eyes, and she's always like, I'm gonna escape this city. I'm gonna escape this town. I'm gonna escape this life, and I'm gonna be as big as the biggest Hollywood star, and they're gonna love me, and I'm gonna have a life that I've always dreamed of. So that's her little fantasy as a girl.
And you can't help but root for her. Kasi parang she really believed in herself so much despite their circumstances. Like, she has created this own world for herself, which Betty was also sometimes dragged into. Kaya feeling ko whenever I read parts ni Flossie, parang siya yung spark of hope when things get heavy. Na parang, when you're in a scene with Flossie, it becomes light. Na parang, you can still dream.
True.
Ganon yung feeling ko sa kanya.
Or my fantasy talaga siya. Like, siya talaga my fantasy. But the thing that I see through Flossie is always external validation. Because like it for me it materialized in that she wants to be an actress for the crowd, for the audience, for the adoration. And then she gets involved with boys quite early on. And then most of her conversations with Betty are about boys and about becoming a woman and, you know, like what men will take from you. So you see little hints of what the mother was like preluding to, starting to manifest a little bit in Flossie. Because like the way that she talks about her first interaction with a boy is like, they'll just take and take from you. I don't know why they call it losing your virginity, because they just take it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it starts to like echo the mom a little bit.
Yeah.
So when we're following the
Pero si
character,
Flossie, must be control this time.
yes,
It's like, I choose how it's taken from me. Parang ganon, compared to the mom.
of course.
So parang it's another type of like feminism in a way. Diba? Like, or what a woman goes through.
Yes.
Like, it's for Flossie, it's like in my own terms. So parang it
Yes, she
didn't
is
seem
very
so
like that.
tragic. It didn't seem like something tragic.
But she chose it.
Yeah, kasi parang kaya feeling ko parang ang strong na character ni Flossie.
She
I really
is.
like her.
She really is a strong character. Parang she takes ownership of all of her decisions.
Yeah.
But there's a really interesting dynamic that we both really like. Not necessarily because it's a great thing that happens in the book, but because it reveals a lot about the mother's character. And that is when Flossie, she ends up in a relationship with
A rich guy.
What do they call them? The cotton.
The silkworm.
Oh,
Something like that
silkworm.
because they make silk.
Yes. So sobrang mayaman sila. They're very well off. And then the mother kind of sits her down. Do you have this bookmark?
Yep, I do.
Perfect.
So here's the dialogue between Flossie and her mom. So sabi ng mom niya, you want to be a star? Then Flossie goes, more than anything. Then the mom says, then let me tell you what I should have told you a long time ago. You're the type of star who only shines when there's no other stars around. And then Flossie goes, I can get shinier. I can work on it. I'm only 16. Then the mom says, if you go to Hollywood, you'll be surrounded by the biggest and brightest stars there are. You'll be average there. Hollywood doesn't put average on the screen. But here in Breathed, which is the place they live in, as a silkworm, which is yung family business ng guy, you'd be the brightest star as a rich man's wife. You've seen how I struggle, barely able to afford lipstick and hosiery. You want that for yourself?
So when you read that, you're like, oh my gosh, the mom is being so cruel. Because throughout the whole book, Flossie keeps talking about her dreams. It's like, it's nothing new. It's not like a little spur of the moment thing like, Mom, I want to be an actress. Like, this is something that she's been, I guess, pouring into since she was a kid.
She's really made for it because when you choose to be a public figure, for example, or an actress, you really have to want it from the very beginning, like from when you're a kid. That's my observation because if things don't work out, at least you were doing something you love.
Yeah.
Diba? Like going through a very harsh industry. So parang all throughout the book, I was as determined as Flossie. I was so...
To see her
so
succeed.
contagious.
Yes, actually she is.
Paniwalang-paniwala ako sa kanya. Kasi parang she was really built for it. And not only built for it, but also like, she was honing her craft.
Yeah.
All her life. So...
Yeah, so that's why this little interaction is a little bit heartbreaking because, I mean, as someone, like for me, if I imagine my mother telling me that at the age of 16, it would like have shattered me because I'd be like, out of all the people to believe in me, shouldn't you? Like, who else do I have to root for me?
Yeah.
But with the context of the mom, like, it kind of reflects on what been talking about parents in a previous episode. Like, usually, parents will guide you to the best of their ability because they want only what's best for you. Usually. And seeing as how the world was kind of set up as a cruel place for the mother, you can see that this was through the lens of protection for Flossie. But very harsh ang delivery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so real because yung pagkasabi ng mom niya na ina-acknowledge ko na you're a star, anak. Like, maganda ka. You have the charisma, lahat. Even yung pag-get niya into relationships with men, it's to practice her sex appealing.
Yeah.
Kasi parang you have to be wanted or lusted
Alluring.
after if you wanna be a Hollywood star. She knew that eh. Kaya parang she was practicing lang with
Yeah.
these men. Tapos, pero binalanse ng mom niya, but you know what, even if you're a star, pag tinabi ka sa mga iba dyan, hindi ikaw yung pinaka-shiny. The practicality behind it, na parang,
Yeah.
I believe you, but in the real world, my child, hindi ka magsasucceed. And the worst part is it kind of came true. It did come true because I think in the previous episode, yung living and independently from your parents, ginawa natin, we balanced it out din naman na even if we don't totally agree with our parents, we have to take it with a grain of salt, yung advice nila. Even if it hurts, para it still serves as guidance.
Yeah.
But at least, pag sinabi ng parent ko sa akin, parang I'll balance my options. Maybe
Right.
I should make a plan B.
Or consider ka lang.
Oo.
Yeah.
Pero in the end, yun nga, out of the mom's hands naman yung nangyari. Pero Flossie did suffer bad fate in the showbiz industry where it was addled with drugs that time. So nalulun siya doon.
Pero before that though, there's an instance that happened.
Oh,
No, talagang I got angry at the book. Like, I was a little bit like,
Okay. So this is the passage. Because parang basically the mom was like, just get pregnant with this guy so that you still get the wealth or a portion of the wealth. So if it doesn't work out, your Hollywood dreams, at least meron kang babagsakan na safety net.
yes.
Which is, ayun nga, may plan B nga yung, parang okay, plan B mo tong guy, but
Yeah.
you have to do this. Just parang, sabi ni Flossie talaga na, I don't want no kid. Said it explicitly. Then her mom goes, you have to want one, Flossie. Cutlass, which is the guy she wants her to marry, is having fun is all. And once he's finished, he'll throw you away. It happens time and time again to girls like you.
So
All of that.
Right. Kaya, like, yeah, you can see how it kind of manifests what the mom says. But what happens is that she does end up with this guy for a time. They get married. She has a child. But when she has this child, she is so detached from her own child. She doesn't want to be near him. She sees him as a burden. So, like, even breastfeeding, nursing this kid, she doesn't even want to. And then when she comes and visits Betty and their family home, the character that she embodies is one of excess, of riches, of like new clothes. And she's always pointing out like, oh, you know, we just bought this and we're renovating this and this
Yeah.
is the car I drive and I'm going here. It's never in context of the child, it's never in context of the relationship. It's more of like the allure, the excess, the sparkly thing.
Yeah.
So it made me really think, like, is this to compensate, one, for the meager upbringing ba? Because this is to your own family. We're bragging to your own family. That felt kind of odd for me. Na,
It's resentment.
yeah.
Resentment sa mom niya because, diba, the mom thought she would benefit in a way that Flossie would be handing her portions of their wealth. But they also still had pride. Although, kung walang-wala na sila, that's when they really ask for it. It breaks my heart because even the dad kind of parang, and the dad deserves it. But like, Flossie wants to spite her mom.
Yeah.
So this is a prime example of like, don't do things for other people.
Yeah.
Because it's not, kahit na sabihin nila tama, mali, ganun. Pero the resentment that was built up is insane. And then in the end, she kind of...
Why do you think that she resents her child, though? Do you think it's an extension of, like, the mom told her to get into this to have a kid? So the child served more of a purpose rather than serving as like, this is something that I love, that I created, that is mine. It's more of just a necessity that kaya she didn't connect with it.
Definitely. And I think it's the cliche na symbol yung child of the life she had to forgo.
Okay.
Diba?
Yeah, that makes sense actually.
Oo.
So parang lahat ng sacrifices na in-embody you, child.
Oo.
Kasi there's a scene, guys. Oh my God, talagang disturbed ako dito. So parang they go to the train tracks, sila ni Betty with the baby boy. And he's a baby. Tapos parang naglower siya ng bata sa train track and then tied his shoelace ba or something
Yeah, sa tracks.
to the tracks. And then parang a train started coming and then she held Betty down as Betty
She really fought
realized.
Betty na wag mong isip yung kid.
And Betty was like, you're crazy, you're insane, let me go. And then talagang na-hold down siya. And then the bata was like, Mama. So parang talagang na-stress ako sa scene na yun. I was like, what the hell is going on?
Stressful na tong book na to. Parang it just peaks like that. Parang yung smartwatch ko, yung stress level ko biglang high. Sis.
Yung blood pressure tumaan.
It's really unnatural reactions na. Pero parang if you look at the build-up of everything kasi,
Crazy though, crazy.
okay.
Ugh. Itong scene talaga, and then yung scene ng animal abuse talaga, trigger warning kayo, promise. Especially yung sa animals. I was texting Nicole as I read it out, and I was like, what the hell am I reading? I'm so upset. The image I cannot get out of my head. Why?
So basically, these are like yung meltdowns for family member. Doon nangyayari yung mga to.
Talagang shocking. So going back to Flossie, she ends up saving the child, thank God.
Oh, split second
Split
decision.
second. But then she ends up divorcing from the guy. The child ends up staying with his family. And so she's finally free, I guess, from the burden of that life.
Yeah.
So she liberates herself and she goes to Hollywood. Like she pursues what she wanted to do. Almost like she's taking her narrative back.
Yeah.
Maybe in spite also of the mother to show like, yeah, I'm going to do this.
And also because the guy did throw her to the side
Yeah.
as predicted. But also a loveless marriage.
Yeah.
Loveless.
And she wasn't being a great mother to the child.
Yeah. And diba, the child was paralyzed.
Ah.
Remember? That because the child fell, like he was jumping from the bed, the child fell, and then she didn't care about the child.
Yeah, and then he was just lying there.
Yeah, and then it paralyzed him forever.
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, so she's really super bad mom.
Yeah.
But you would hear stories about that era of moms like that because I guess it was just such a frustrating, confusing time for women. Like, when you're like kind of predetermined not to be able to pursue anything else
Except
from
like
your outside of your
childbearing.
household.
Yeah.
So
True.
it's
It's a lot to unpack.
puts you in like extreme situations that that evoke
Yeah.
extreme reactions as well. So it's really unbelievable, but also how could you invalidate what they went through?
Yeah, that's true.
Crazy.
That's what you feel throughout this whole book. And so after that instance, Flossie then goes to Hollywood. And so Betty only hears from her in instances of postcards and stuff.
And she would be really high on phone calls.
Almost incoherent. And then it's revealed that Flossie dies from an overdose. And then there's
The highlight of her career was her being a diner girl as an extra na.
And then there's a quote here from the book. This is from Betty after they find out that her sister has passed, Flossie has passed. I don't think my mother was right about Flossie having no talent. When I look back on it now, I think her whole life was an act. Did I really know my sister? Or was I only seeing the girl she was pretending to be? The flirt, the wife, the mother. Maybe being Flossie Carpenter was her greatest performance. So good, we all thought it was her. Lako din.
Wow.
So it kind of, Betty has this talent throughout the book where she's able to encapsulate such authentic observations and human experiences and write them down. And it's her coping mechanism as a character in the book as well. Like this is when she sees all these traumatic, shocking things, she creates short stories with them and then buries them in the ground as a way of processing her, I guess, trauma as well.
Yeah.
But this revelation on Flossie kind of just breaks your heart, because this is where we started talking about like coping mechanisms of each of these children. Like, it's the escapism. It's like our reality is kind of bleak and dreary and hard. So how can we escape? And Flossie's obviously was to explore being other characters, to live another life.
Yeah.
Through the role of being an actress. And so I think that's what the quote is talking about here. Like, maybe Flossie was always, even her pursuit of her dream or her escapism was a role in itself, just to cope with the reality that they had. And that's so sad.
Pero when Betty wrote that down, parang nag-flashback sa akin lahat talaga ng scenarios with Flossie. Pero, you know, it's a coping mechanism also. Like, siya na lang, you may hope throughout the story. You know, like,
Super.
So finally, we go to Betty.
Yes, Betty, our protagonist. Something that really shocked me about Betty's characterization is that it starts out so young. She sees things that I don't think people should see when they're like 6, 7, 8 years old.
Yeah.
But she is the most persistent story of hope, I would say, characterized in the characters. And she is the one who gets out.
Yeah. Finally.
Of all the siblings. Like, siya talaga ang last remaining one. So, naging totoo yung sinabi ng mga mom niya, or her mom and her dad to her, like, you are the strongest, Betty. She ends up being, like, seen as the strongest even at the very end page, because she's the one that, parang, you think it's right to say, na parang binuhat niya ng lahat ng weight of the story of her family.
Yeah.
And went on to do something with her life, or despite it all. Despite it.
I would agree. Na parang yun yung naging strength niya.
Yeah.
Oh, Betty. So Betty, to start with Betty, she had trouble with accepting standards of beauty. Napili ko, that's the first thing they teach you as a woman. Honestly. So we're gonna start off with that. On the surface, like, because Betty is the one who looks most like her dad, who's Cherokee.
And this is in the 1950s.
Yeah.
So colorism is like rampant, especially in school, like segregation of colors and races, like not to intermingle with people of color, because there's the stigma of like they carry sickness, or, you know, like other really negative connotations. So this is the world that they live in, and we see it particularly profiled through the eyes of the dad first, and in the story, because the dad is such a storyteller, which I think is beautiful, because I feel he instills the writer spirit within Betty, where she goes on to become a writer. But in his stories, he alludes to and then describes in detail later on, when Betty is older, the harsh realities of what it's like to live as a Cherokee Indian man in that society at that time. Even though you'll see the dad really actively try to protect Betty and to build her up, because what's really beautiful about the Cherokee way of life or the culture is that women are seen as powerful. Women are the leaders. Women are the owners of the magic. Like, they're the ones that are in tune with the land. They're the ones who embody the wisdom to lead the people. So women are really put on a pedestal. And I love that the dad was paired with the mom, and that's their dynamic, because it's really beautiful. In a way, it's healing. But going back to Betty, you can see that her dad is always trying to instill, no, Betty, you are powerful. You have magic within you. You carry the lineage, the blood of your ancestors, the powerful woman that came before you. And you can see that clashing with her reality at school and in the town that they live, where at school she's called names that are derogatory, and she's teased. And you can see, like, even inward, she's like, I wish I had blonde hair and blue eyes, and I would be pretty, and I just wish I would look different.
She really prayed about it. She's like, make me look like the girl. Give me her blue eyes, her blonde hair, her peaches and cream skin. And then she would cut out from magazines yung mga features ng girls that she likes. and then inassemble niya under her bed, and then
pray about it. Like, please, when I open my eyes and look in the mirror, I want to look like this.
her. Yeah. So parang she learned early on na rin na parang the world will treat you based on how you look like.
Exactly.
So that's so far. So yeah, that's the first one for Betty's standard of beauty. Pero I like how Betty eventually learns then about what real beauty is. Parang like every girl.
Like every girl.
Nagka-journey ka of acceptance, of self-worth, self-esteem. And that was shown in the story with the old lady.
Oh my gosh. This came across as an essay because, like, the old lady Slipperwort, she is like a little side character that comes in because Betty, like, has a summer job or something for her, just helping her out with chores. So she's like a 98 or 80 something year old woman. And it just so happens, like, in the setup they have at this woman's house, so Betty will sleep over, and then to get to the bathroom at night, you have to go through the old lady's bedroom. And then one night she does go, and she sees the old woman is just sitting there fully naked, looking at herself in the mirror, kind of just like tulala lang, or just like, I don't know what she's thinking or doing. So Betty kind of builds up to cut the courage. It's like, what are you doing? But they have a conversation that kind of reveals things about old lady Slipperwort's past, her perception of herself, and even Betty's perception of a woman who's aging.
Yeah.
Because, like, at first, diba, when she approaches, she's apprehensive because it looks
She's so
weird.
scared.
Yeah, because, you know, like, this is an aged body sitting in front of her.
Yeah.
She's never seen that before. And the old lady starts to talk to her about her life and reveals that she was once in love with a woman. And back then in the 1940s, maybe 1930s, because she's old at 1950, so maybe this is even earlier, like 1920s, 1910s. Her partner, the woman, was sent off to a mental institution because she was with a woman. That's how it was perceived, like a sickness, like a mental illness. And then came back just like a shell of herself because they probably did like a lobotomy or something and just like ruined her brain. And there's a quote here where old lady Slipperwort is standing and looking at herself in the mirror, and Betty's with her. And she stood and stared into the mirror, stepping closer and closer to the glass until her hand and the reflection of it were touching fingertips. It ain't easy being a woman, little Cherokee, she said. Especially ain't easy being a woman who spends her life afraid of who she really is. They called me Old Woman Slipperwort. Old woman, that is who I am. The woman who walks in flat rubber-soled shoes to the store to buy potatoes and milk and bread. Stains in my dress from the breakfast I eat alone. My back hunched, my stockings fallen down on legs that are veined in blue and purple. A head of white hair and a face that no one sees. I have lived 97 years on this earth, and all I have to show for it is me, alone in a bedroom, staring at a reflection of a woman who is too afraid to be herself. She looked from her reflection to mine. Don't let it happen to you, Betty. Don't ever be afraid to be yourself. You don't want to live so long only to realize you ain't lived at all.
I'm so glad that Betty had these encounters with these people. Like, it made up so much of her character as she developed. And because old lady Slipperwort, because yun nga, nawala yung love of her life, her partner, parang she slept around.
Yes.
Yeah.
Naging promiscuous siya. Just to compensate ba? Or because, like, that's...
To hide her identity then. Ganon. And also kasi parang, ano ba bang use na itong life na to? Ganon. But also mainly to hide her identity, I guess.
And parang nag-explore niya ng theme na parang it was more accepted to be promiscuous than it was to be in love with a woman.
Right.
Like, more societally acceptable.
So she lived that part, I think the best part of her life, when she was young, on other people's terms. So yun yung tragedy niya.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And lost a part of herself in the process.
So after hearing the story of old lady Slipperwort, Betty had this realization na I wasn't as afraid seeing her body this second night. In the folds and creases, I saw her history. Her skin was a diary of her soul. All the springs she had watched the flowers bloom. The summer she had stood before the moon and kissed its face. The autumns she had grown wiser. The winters that had frozen the initials of her name. Each wrinkle was a record of this and of every hour, minute, and second she had lived. All her secrets were written in her skin. The things she had asked God for. the things she had cursed the devil about. In such age before me, I saw only beauty. So feeling ko yun din yung good conclusion for Betty, who struggled with her appearance all her life. And then feeling another harsh reality that women have to grow to accept naman is aging.
Yeah.
So
So
for
or
her
like
turn-
valuing oneself as a woman just by appearance alone.
Yeah. So for Betty to come into terms with that, to appreciate now when I get old and I lose all my beauty, etong woman nga parang she was so desired before, 'di ba? Yun yung kwento niya. Tapos now she's parang feeling ko ang hirap i-accept nun eh. Now you're old, nobody finds you
invisible.
pretty, and you're that old lady at the corner of the street with this routine. So
But that's even a feeling until now. Like
Yeah.
people who are, especially women in their 50s, 60s, they start to feel invisible. Like parang they only serve a purpose until a certain age and then they become, invisible to other people.
yeah.
So it's a really beautiful, like roundabout way of seeing Betty's character development. So that was Betty, and we've talked about the other female characters who we feel hold a lot of reverence and weight within the story of Betty. We're going to split this up into our first part. In the second part naman, we're going to delve into the character of the father, who for both of us was such a beautiful character. And also some questions that we have for each other and our insights within the book Betty.
Yes. And if other parts of the book stood out for you that we missed, please do share them in the comment section because we would love to see your insight. I mean, each reader comes from a different context. So we would love to know why those parts have impacted you.
Yeah, definitely. So thanks for sitting along for our first in-depth episode of Discussing Betty for our book club. As always, you can follow us over at Two Steps Back, the podcast, on Instagram and Facebook. And if you want to send us an email as well, we also do love getting your telegrams. We have featured one already and a few in our episodes. So if you have something that you want to talk about, maybe one of the themes in the book really spoke to you and you want to just share or ask a question, you can message us on twostepsbackpodcast@gmail.com. But as always, guys, thank you so much for hanging out, and we'll see you in part 2.
Thank you.
Bye.